Rain and red wine. John tugged at his tie, the knot suddenly feeling too tight. He loosened it a fraction, then tightened it again, the movement jerky and nervous. The rain lashed against the panoramic window of the hotel suite, blurring the city lights into hazy streaks of amber and white. He turned away from the storm, the drumming a relentless counterpoint to the frantic rhythm of his heart. He glanced at the room service tray, the remnants of his solitary dinner looking pathetic. A half-empty bottle of red wine sat beside a discarded bread roll, the label catching the soft lamplight. He hadn't meant to drink so much, but the waiting, the anticipation, it had gnawed at him. He picked up the glass, swirling the dark liquid, but didn't drink. He walked to the center of the room, the plush carpet muffling his footsteps. "Ms. Evans," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the large space. "Thank you for seeing me." He winced. Too formal. He tried again, pacing now. "Look, I know this is unconventional, but I had to tell you." He stopped, frustrated. He needed to be professional, respectful, but also, honest. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. The rain intensified, the wind howling like a banshee outside. This was a mistake. He was out of his depth. The chime of the doorbell sliced through his thoughts. He froze, the half-empty glass trembling in his hand. He set it down carefully, the clink against the glass tabletop sounding deafening in the sudden silence. He took a deep breath, straightened his tie one last time, and walked towards the door. A CEO's concern. Eleanor Evans entered the hotel suite, a gust of damp air swirling in with her. Her perfectly tailored suit was slightly rumpled, and a few strands of dark hair clung to her cheek. "Terrible weather," she said, more to herself than John. "Did you manage to finalize the Johnson presentation?" John straightened, relief flooding him that she wasn't furious about his earlier near collapse. "Yes, Ms. Evans. I tweaked the projections based on your feedback. It's ready to go." He gestured towards the sleek laptop on the desk. She crossed the room, her heels clicking softly on the plush carpet. "Show me." As John walked her through the slides, explaining each data point with practiced ease, Eleanor listened intently, occasionally interjecting with sharp, insightful questions. Finally, she nodded, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "Good. Very good, John. Your dedication is commendable." She paused, her gaze lingering on him. "But dedication shouldn't come at the expense of your well-being." Her voice softened, losing its usual CEO edge. "You look exhausted. Honestly, you look like you haven't slept in days." She stepped closer, her brow furrowed with concern. "Maybe you should work on something else today, John. Something less demanding." Her eyes searched his, a silent question hanging in the air. "Burnout and breakthrough." Eleanor Evans swept into the hotel suite, her silk scarf askew, the scent of expensive perfume momentarily eclipsing the stale air conditioning. "John," she said, her voice a low hum. "Close the door." He obeyed, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, the plea for recognition, the desperate need for the promotion. "Ms. Evans," he began, his voice cracking. "I've been putting in the hours, exceeding expectations." She raised a hand, silencing him. "I know, John. I see it. You're burning the candle at both ends. Frankly, you look like you haven't slept in a week." He swallowed, the admission sticking in his throat. I want this, Ms. Evans. More than anything." The fluorescent light glinted off the sweat on his forehead. Eleanor walked towards the window, overlooking the city's glittering skyline. "Then maybe," she said, her voice almost lost in the distant hum of traffic, "maybe you should work on something else today." John stared at her, dumbfounded. The words hung in the air, an unexpected lifeline thrown into his sea of exhaustion. He'd anticipated criticism, perhaps a pep talk, but not this. A close-up on his face would reveal the confusion, the flicker of hope battling against the ingrained drive to succeed, to prove himself, to earn this chance. His eyes, usually bright with ambition, were now wide with a bewildered surprise. Misunderstandings and invitations. The brunette's words hung in the air, thick and heavy like the humid Miami air John had stepped out of just hours ago. Maybe you should work on something else today. He heard the polite dismissal, the thinly veiled criticism. His stomach plummeted. Had he messed up that badly? All those late nights, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the burning desire to impress Ms. Evans, now seemed like a colossal waste. He swallowed, the lump in his throat making it difficult. "I understand," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. The plush carpet suddenly seemed intensely interesting. "John," Ms. Evans said, her voice softer now, laced with something he couldn't quite decipher. He finally looked up. She was standing by the window, the city lights painting shimmering patterns on her face. "That's not what I meant at all. You're working too hard. Burning yourself out. You need a break." He blinked, confusion warring with relief. "A break?" "Yes. Think of it as market research. See what Miami has to offer. Get some fresh air." She turned, her eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes, fixed on him. "I have a meeting this afternoon, but perhaps you'd like to explore the city. I could show you around later, after I'm finished." The invitation, so casually delivered, felt like a tidal wave. He knew he should refuse. Knew the boundaries were already blurring. But the thought of spending the evening with her, away from spreadsheets and presentations, was too tempting. That would be great, Ms. Evans," he stammered, the words feeling clumsy and inadequate. A faint smile touched her lips, a brief flash of something almost playful. "Eleanor, John. Please. And after you've rested, perhaps we can discuss alternative projects. City lights and shared stories." The rain had intensified, turning the city into a shimmering canvas of reflected light. "Hopeless for a cab," Ms. Evans sighed, pulling her coat tighter. "Walk with me. I know a place." John, surprised by the invitation, nodded, falling into step beside her. The neon glow of shop signs blurred in the downpour, painting streaks of red and blue across the wet pavement. He hadn't realized how tense he'd been until the cool air hit his face, a welcome change from the stuffy hotel room. The cafe was a haven, tucked away on a side street. Steam fogged the windows, and the aroma of cinnamon and coffee hung heavy in the air. Inside, mismatched chairs and warm, amber lamps created an intimate atmosphere. They found a small table near the back. "So," Ms. Evans said, after they'd ordered, her gaze surprisingly direct. "Tell me something about yourself, John. Something that isn't code." He hesitated. "There's not much to tell. Worked hard, got here." She raised an eyebrow. "Everyone has a story before the grind, John." She then shared a story of her own, about a childhood dream of being a painter, abandoned for the sensible path of business. The confession seemed to loosen something in him. He spoke then, about his grandfather, a carpenter who'd taught him the value of creating something real, something tangible. As he talked, the rain outside softened to a drizzle, and the city lights seemed to glow a little brighter. He saw her less as his boss, and more as someone who understood the pull of dreams deferred. The shared vulnerability hung in the air, a fragile bridge forming between them. The bartender's wisdom. The hotel bar hummed with a low thrum of after-work chatter. Ms. Evans perched on a stool, the ice in her gin and tonic clinking softly as she stirred it with a swizzle stick. John stood beside her, nursing a ginger ale. He'd declined her offer of something stronger, claiming a headache. "Just one, then I should head up," she said, more to the mirrored wall behind the bar than to him. "Early start tomorrow." Izzy, the bartender, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with amusement, polished a glass, his eyes flicking between them. He caught John's gaze and offered a slow, knowing smile. As Ms. Evans paid for their drinks, Izzy leaned in, his voice a low murmur only John could hear. Sometimes, the best deals are the ones you don't see coming. And sometimes, he paused, wiping the counter with unnecessary force, the loneliest people are hiding in plain sight. John frowned, unsure what to make of the cryptic advice. Ms. Evans turned, a questioning look in her eyes. "Everything all right, John?" "Fine," he said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Just admiring the ambience." Upstairs, in his sterile hotel room, Izzy's words echoed in his head. He pictured Ms. Evans sitting alone at the bar after he'd left, the ice in her glass melting, the laughter around her a dull, distant roar. He thought of her dedication to the company, her unwavering focus, and wondered if Izzy was right. Was she truly alone beneath that polished exterior? He looked out the window at the city lights twinkling below, a vast expanse of interconnected lives, and felt a sudden, sharp pang of something he couldn't quite name. Darkness and confessions. The lights flickered, died, and the hum of the air conditioner choked into silence. Outside, a collective gasp rose from the city, a wave of disorientation that crashed against the hotel windows. John swore under his breath. "Just great," he muttered, fumbling for his phone. The screen illuminated his face, casting long shadows. No signal. "John. What was that?" Eleanor's voice, usually crisp and commanding, was laced with a tremor. He realized she must be unnerved by the sudden darkness. "Power outage, Ms. Evans." "Citywide, it seems." He crossed the small space between them, the carpet soft under his bare feet. She was a silhouette against the inky window, the city lights replaced by an oppressive void. He found her hand, her fingers cool and surprisingly delicate. "Maybe," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "maybe we should just sit." They settled on the sofa, the darkness amplifying the scent of her perfume, a subtle blend of sandalwood and something floral he couldn't quite place. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant wail of a siren. "You know, John," she began, her voice soft, "I worry about you. You work too hard." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Comes with the territory, I guess." "No," she insisted, her hand tightening around his. "It doesn't. You have a spark. A real talent. Don't let it burn out, chasing deadlines." He turned to face her, his eyes slowly adjusting to the gloom. He could make out the curve of her cheek, the glint of reflected light in her eyes. "You think I have talent, Ms. Evans?" "Eleanor," she corrected softly. "And yes, John. I do. I've thought so for a long time." Her voice was warm. His heart pounded. A tentative kiss. The silence in the hotel room thickened, heavier than the damask curtains drawn against the city lights. Eleanor's words hung in the air, "Maybe you should work on something else today," echoing the unspoken feelings that had been simmering between them since the disastrous client dinner. John's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd seen the concern etched on her face all evening, a subtle tenderness he hadn't dared to acknowledge. She moved closer, the scent of her perfume, something floral and sophisticated, filled his senses. Her hand, warm and surprisingly steady, reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "You look exhausted, John." He swallowed, the words catching in his throat. "I am exhausted, and utterly captivated." He lifted his own hand, hesitantly, and cupped her cheek. Her skin was soft, like velvet. Time seemed to slow, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound in the universe. He searched her eyes, a plea for permission, a desperate hope that he wasn't misreading the signals. Eleanor's gaze softened, the professional mask she usually wore dissolving. She leaned in, the space between them shrinking until their breaths mingled. He could feel the heat radiating from her body. And then, it happened. A tentative brush of lips, hesitant and questioning. He deepened the kiss, a rush of adrenaline and something akin to fear flooding his veins. Her lips parted slightly, and he felt a flicker of response, a spark that ignited a fire he hadn't known existed. They broke apart, breathless. Eleanor's eyes were wide, a mixture of shock and something else, excitement. John's own face felt flushed, his hands trembling slightly. The air crackled with unspoken questions and a delicious, terrifying uncertainty. He had crossed a line. And there was no going back. The morning after. The sudden blaze of the bedside lamp jolted them both. Power surged back, banishing the comforting darkness, illuminating the rumpled sheets and the undeniable intimacy that hung in the air. The spell, woven from candlelight and shared vulnerability, shattered. John blinked, momentarily disoriented. Eleanor sat up, pulling the silk duvet higher, the movement betraying a nervous energy she usually masked so well. The digital clock on the nightstand glared 6:17 a.m. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken questions. He rose first, grabbing his discarded shirt. "I should check on the presentation," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. Eleanor watched him, her expression unreadable. "John," she began, her voice low. "We need to talk about." He cut her off, a forced lightness in his tone. "Talk later. Big day. Need to make sure those charts are perfect." He escaped into the bathroom, the click of the door echoing in the suddenly too bright room. Later, over a tense breakfast, she broached the subject again. "This changes things, doesn't it?" He stirred his coffee, avoiding her eyes. It was a moment. The pressure, the blackout. "Don't," she said softly. "Don't diminish it. It was more than that." She paused, then added, "I know you're burning out, John. Maybe you should work on something else today. With me." His gaze finally met hers, a flicker of hope warring with apprehension. "And what about tomorrow? And the day after that? We both have careers, Eleanor. Responsibilities." She sighed, the weight of their reality settling between them. "I know. But we can't just pretend this didn't happen." Her eyes searched his. "Can we?